We are recording this time. Yay! Okay, so let me go ahead and share my screen and we will get started. Okay, so tonight, we are talking about Zap Your Way to Business Domination. I know a lot of people who are in here are also Dubsado fanatics. So now that you know how to automate your client relationship management, now you can think of all the possibilities to manage your entire business automatically or with workflows. So I think that if you are just dipping your toe into automation, this is a great place to start. And if you know what Zapier is, then that's awesome too. So let's get started. First and foremost, let me introduce myself. If you don't know me, my name is Jen Rudd. I'm a business consultant. I work with small business owners to organize, systemize, and grow their business. I've been in business for 6.5 years. I actually grew up in a family business. We were steel manufacturing and fabrication, and that was before the steel industry kind of went crazy. The business actually dissolved when I was in college, so the family business that I was preparing to one day take over no longer existed by the time I got my business degree. So that was fun. I also got my concentration in accounting, and also when I was in college, Arthur Andersen imploded. So all of my ideas kind of went out the window for what I wanted to do when I grew up. So I went into corporate America for 10 years. I also got my certification in project management, and that means that I really know how to work with the organizational methods of managing projects. I am obsessed with businesses and making things work. My husband also calls me a button presser, which I think lends itself well to setting up systems and organizing them. So that's why we're here. Let me see. Just hit a button I wasn't supposed to. Let's see, chat. There's a question. Where's my chat window? Yes, it does take a ton of hours to do project planning. My project management certification was really funny because the book, the PMBOK, is about this thick and the study guide is about this thick. And I left the test not knowing if I passed. I wasn't sure what you were supposed to do. I forgot to hit the last button. So I thought I had to wait for like 6 months to get my certification, and they're like, oh no, you passed, you just didn't hit the last button. So that was fun, but I did that right as I was leaving corporate America, so it was kind of cool, and I've never looked back. So let's see, let's talk about Linda said that she worked for Arthur Andersen many moons ago. Yes, were you there before right before the implosion or well before it? That's good. I hope so. I actually knew somebody who left, who was in the middle of who was working for Goldman Sachs right as it imploded, and became a termite. He started his own business doing termite remediation and prevention. So it's very interesting to see what happened with people when their plan A's disintegrated. So it's very interesting. I think entrepreneurship is kind of the misfits of the world, but they're also the people that have learned a lot from seeing other people run their businesses, and I think they've learned from the mistakes of others. So I think being in different organizations before you go into entrepreneurship is always very important. Side note, okay, so let's talk about what Zapier is. It is an app communication tool. So most people I know like to have either a ton of apps or 0 apps when it comes to running their business, or they want one app to do everything. That is the conversation I hear all the time when it comes to things like Dubsado, is like, why can't it do everything? And what happens is a lot of apps are really good at a couple things. So for example, Dubsado is a client relationship management tool. But as a business, you don't just manage clients, you also manage your books, you manage your projects, you manage your production, you manage your staff. So it's really important to not try to put all of those things into one app if that app's not completely set up for your business to do everything out of. I think some tools try to help other areas of your business, but really you should just say, okay, this app is for this particular purpose, and how can I make this app talk with this app? And that's where Zapier comes in. So it's a great communication tool because it helps all these programs that you need to run your business, whether it be QuickBooks, Dubsado, MailChimp, Asana, Trello, Calendly, all those talk to one another so that you're not spending all of your time trying to get information from one piece to another. So that's what Zapier is. I also like to call it a virtual assistant. So those of us who would just love if somebody could just do some of the paperwork for us, or some of the organization, or just send out those emails that need to go out, but they're really not anything that you need to touch, but you're not ready to hire someone to do that, or you think that maybe a machine can do it better, which sometimes it can. This is a way to get programs to do that for you, like send emails. If you've been working with other programs like Dubsado, where they do workflows, where you have the automation, you understand how it's awesome to tell all these different programs what to do in what order. So Zapier is also that other program that makes that bridge, but also tells things what to do in what order. So it's kind of cool. And then also the cool thing about Zapier is a lot of people try to do APIs and coding and all these things to, get extensions from one program to another. And basically it just takes away that need to actually code anything. It just, it's all recipes, building blocks, super simple, so that you're not trying to code something that is completely out of your depth. And if you are, again, a Dubsado user, you have all these workflows and they're great for certain pieces, but then they kind of fall off. And this is how to take those workflows to the next step. Zapier works with over 750 different web applications. Let that sink in for just a minute. So 750, that's crazy. So you shouldn't need to have 750 different programs to run your business, but the fact that you have so many choices is awesome. It means that you don't have to conform with specific systems just because they don't work with Zapier, because for the most part, Zapier will work with them in some capacity, so you can make things happen. So before we move on, Alan asked, dropping in there in case it doesn't get answered, what's the difference between Zapier and if this then that? So if this then that is actually the old school Zapier, is what I like to call it. I was using it, gosh, I first started my business in 2011. It's a great tool. It doesn't take it as far as Zapier does. You can make if this and that work. It's a great free tool, and it has some really cool, fun features. But Zapier takes it to the next level. And the other thing that Zapier really has going for it is it has its own built-in systems. So for example, if you wanted if this and that to text you for some reason, you'd have to buy a text service app to make that happen, at least in the last 4 years. So it kind of has those already built into Zapier. So it just takes if this and that a step further. But it's still a good program. It's just not as cool as Zapier. So let's talk about the super basic premise of Zapier, is that it has 3 different functions. Function 1 is the trigger. This is the tipping point that this one app basically hits that first domino to knock everything else into line, makes that workflow happen. You have one trigger for every recipe that you have. They're called Zaps, but if you just remember that there's only one trigger that you can use for each recipe, no matter how detailed or how organized you want it to be, always remember that there's one thing that has a trigger. You have to have an app that is a trigger to start a process. And then you also have apps that have search functionality. So if you want, for example, a Zap to search for an email, this is where you would have the search functionality. You can have it look through a spreadsheet for you in Google Drive. You can you can make you look for through cards in Trello. So it's something that will actually, if you want something to happen based on what Zaps find, then that's where the search tool comes in. The last piece is the action. The action is what actually happens when the Zap is fired off. So the big thing to understand that there's these 3 functions, but not all apps have the same 3 functions or even have 3 functions. Some apps only have triggers, some apps only have search and action, some only have action, or they might have trigger and action. So it's really important to understand how the applications you're trying to use work before you're trying to build a Zap or a recipe in Zapier. So again, it's trigger, search, and action. I'm going to take a drink of water because I'm getting dry mouth. I have been talking all day, let me tell you. Okay. So again, we're going to talk, we talked about a little bit about the capabilities. You either have a trigger, a search, or an action. So when you decide what you're going to build, the first thing I would definitely do is take a little gander around Zapier and see what the possibilities are for the apps that you're trying to use. And why this is important is also to understand that maybe how you think something's going to happen isn't actually how it's going to happen. If you focus on the end result or the things that you want to happen, the actions that you want to happen, don't always worry about what the trigger is. And if you start thinking away from that and pull yourself out of that box of it has to happen in this order, it's not going to happen, you will go crazy with Zapier, okay? So let's first talk about how to look at the capabilities of Zapier. So if you go to Zapier, they have one of the screens is Explore. Move this out of the way. So Explore is where you can see all the different apps that Zapier works with and also some recipes that you can work with as well. So for example, I can type in QuickBooks Online, Thinkific, Gmail. Formatter is one of those built-in applications that Zapier has. Actually formats information for you. So if you have one app that has information in one output and you need it to come to a different output, that's where Formatter comes in, which is really cool. So for example, you can have, things come from Typeform, they can be formatted and then pushed into QuickBooks. So if there's information that you need in Typeform, but it needs to be organized in such a way to send bills in QuickBooks, that's where Formatter comes in. So again, you're going to want to kind of look through the different apps that you want to use, and it'll tell you all the different cool things that you can do. So for example, if you have a new Thinkific order, it can send an email to anybody based on different filters and different information, and so on and so forth. So the first one I want to talk about, which I think is what everybody likes to talk about, is QuickBooks, Dubsado. And what is cool about Dubsado is that it now integrates with Zapier. The downside of Dubsado is that it only has 2 triggers, which means that you can't do any searches and you can't do any actions. So you can't have another app do something in Dubsado. But you can have something when a lead capture comes in or somebody pays something in Dubsado, you can make certain things happen. So that does limit you to people who are paying a specific invoice or people who are new leads in your system. But you have a lot of things happening in between those 2 things, right? So one of the things I like to think about is if you have a new contract, for example, and you want something to happen to that in your project management, then instead of worrying about the lead capture or the payments, why wouldn't you look at the emails that are coming through from Dubsado into your Gmail account, for example? Because Gmail, you can search for emails based on different criteria. So you know that emails coming from Dubsado that say new signed contract will always come through in a certain format. New questionnaires that come through will always come through in a specific format. You can also send emails in Gmail. So you can have a trigger where you start something happening with Zapier. You can search through Gmails, and you can also create actions. Do I have everybody so far? Or do I need to break it down a little bit more? Okay. Alan's good. Is anybody else okay? Okay. Hi, Chandra. Okay, so next we're going to talk about MailChimp. MailChimp is also another robust Zapier integration. It has triggers, searches, and actions so that you can have things happen on new subscribers. You can have people search. You can search through campaigns and subscribers, And you can also do something based on an unsubscribe. You can unsubscribe, or you can update a subscriber, or you can do segmentation. So if you're into all the cool funneling, definitely MailChimp is a great program that works with Zapier really well and can work with other programs to make changes in your mailing lists. Like, for example, if you have somebody on a email cycle trying to get them to sign up for your email course, once they sign up for your email course, they can be taken out of the sales cycle and put into the new student cycle, for example. So that's one way that you can use Zapier with other programs and MailChimp. Okay? And then let's talk about SMS. This is a feature that we talked about in the last class, and that was getting text messages when you get paid. When you have a premium app like PayPal, which is you have to have, I think, the business account in PayPal, and you have to have a paid Zapier account, you can get notifications when you get paid. Also in Dubsado, you get notifications when you get paid. You can have your phone text you whenever you get a new payment from PayPal or from Dubsado, which is super cool because you can have like the cha-ching go on. I have my Dubsado payments linked as a contact in my phone, and I also have the cool logo as like the picture for that person. So in my text, I see the Dubsado flower or whatever that is, and then it says Dubsado payments, it says the amount and all the information, and it also has like a little cha-ching noise whenever I get paid, which is kind of cool. It's nice motivation, right? And then also another project management program is Asana. So as you can see, it's super robust. You can do triggers, you can do searches, you can do actions. Calendly is really fun. We can go over a little bit about how I set up my Calendly, which is super cool. You cannot do any searches or actions in Calendly yet. So you can't create a new Calendly appointment. But if somebody schedules an appointment with you, you can start putting them into a Zap for different situations and different handling, okay? And then the last one I wanted to show you, or two last ones, is in Google Sheets. If you're someone like me who likes to manage their business in Google Drive, I use Sheets like crazy. I use it to store information, to share information, to keep track of things, to keep track of like my affiliates, sales, all types of things. So it's really cool that you can create new worksheets. You can look up spreadsheet rows, which is awesome. So you can look for information, and then you can create rows and columns and all kinds of stuff all by Zaps. So you can have the Zaps actually clean your spreadsheets for you with information, which is kind of cool. And the last one I think is a really popular program is Trello. And as you can see, there are a ton of trigger searches and actions. So if you are a Trello fanatic, Zapier is for you, let me tell you. Okay, so let's go back to build some apps, okay? Let me make sure I didn't miss anything in my little introduction. Okay, let's go back over here for a second. Share screen. So when you're deciding to build the recipe, so first we're going to go through and check to make sure that the apps that you want to use somehow have triggers, searches, and actions that would make sense for your end results. Things that you can use Zaps for that are super simple, or things that would make your life easier, are onboarding reminders. If you have a new client and you have a whole list of things that need to happen when you have a new client, instead of scrambling, you can have Zapier do the work for you, so you're all organized and everything's very seamless and clean, and now you don't have to dump something on an assistant's desk just to get, the Google Drive folder put together and all of the information sent, and any setup that you need to have in your project management tools. All that can be done. Positive reinforcement, so those little cha-chings when you get a new client, super awesome. To stay on task. Keeping, if you have a task management program like Asana, making sure that the reminders from Dubsado get to you in your task management in Asana so that you are staying on task and that things don't just get lost in your email. You can also use it to communicate with your team, because some of the cool things in Asana means that for example, you can actually tag team members in your Zaps, in the Zaps in new tasks that you create in Asana. And also, I like to use it to find discrepancies because I'm a numbers freak. Okay, so let's go ahead and build. And then let's go back over here. Move over there. Okay, so I like to go through Zapier when I have pain points, for example. One way that I do that is that I use Sendal for my online products. So Sendal usually sends the client, I get an information from Sendal whenever I get a new payment, and I have it update to a spreadsheet. I also like to make sure that when I sell something on Sendal, or if I get a payment from PayPal, if those two things match, because sometimes Sendal will misfire. Drives me crazy. Every once in a while, maybe on a Sunday afternoon when I don't want to look at my computer, don't want to look at my phone, I notice that I got a payment from PayPal, but I don't see the corresponding email from Sendal saying that the file was sent to the person who purchased. Drives me batty. So I like to make sure that I keep track of all the sales that I have in PayPal and have them tie up with the payments that I'm getting, or the sales that I'm getting from Sendal. So I have a spreadsheet. So I have PayPal set up, and let's go through the whole process of setting up a very simple Zap, and then we can go through and see how they tie together, okay? So I have PayPal set up. I have a business account with PayPal, and there's the one trigger, which is a successful sale. And then I connect my PayPal account, which is through hooks, which basically you have to go into your IPN settings, and then you copy the information from Zapier into PayPal, and then link it together, and then you test it. So then you test you test each step as you go. And then so I want to check to make sure that all my payments in PayPal go into a spreadsheet, and if they're already in there because of a Sendal, then they won't need to create a row. But if it doesn't have a payment from Sendal, and it doesn't have any information from Sendal, then it'll create a new line in the spreadsheet. What that will tell me is if I see two payments for a product for a certain person's email, if I see one payment for a product with one person's email, but there's no Sendal order attached, it will actually create a new line so they know there's a discrepancy. Basically, I'm telling Zapier to check the spreadsheet to make sure that I either have one payment from one email that also matches the Sendal order, or I create a new line that says I have a payment from PayPal, and if it's the same amount as a Sendal order, then I have a discrepancy that Sendal didn't actually send out the file. So it's just a really easy way for me to eyeball like once a week, once a day, to make sure that all of the orders that went through Sendal and also PayPal. So it takes longer to explain, but it's faster in the long run to create the Zap, okay? So I have all of these different options in Google Sheets to either create a spreadsheet row, or to look up a spreadsheet row, or to update a spreadsheet row. What I want to happen is I want it to look up a spreadsheet row. And so I have Google Sheets attached. And this is where the cool stuff comes in, okay? I found a spreadsheet that I wanted to update. I pulled the ID from the spreadsheet. It walks you through the whole process. And then I'm telling it to look up the column where the email is. In that spreadsheet. And then I'm going to have it check the spreadsheet for the payer email from PayPal. And why this is important is because whenever you get information from PayPal, here's all the different items that come through in that transaction. Here's all the information that you can use to update spreadsheets, to send information, to if you need to know like which workflow someone's using for Dubsado, all of that stuff. So all this information comes through, so you can have this updated on the spreadsheet. You can also look for it in the spreadsheet. So it has like a ton of information. And as you get more into Zapier, you will start to see all the cool things that you can do and why all these different pieces of information that's being sent over from PayPal is really important, okay? So as you can see, I am tracking in the spreadsheet all the different things from Sundowl. I created the spreadsheet from Sundowl, but then I'm having the PayPal email come through from PayPal. This is what creates if the email doesn't exist already in the spreadsheet. I can have the first name and last name in one cell. I can have the total sale. I can have any gateway fees, so if I can track all the fees in one spreadsheet. I can have the payment date. I can have the item names that were sold, all that. So it's super cool because what you'll see is that you have the spreadsheet that here's the PayPal email for Mr. Buyer, and he bought a product from my Sundowl. And then I have another email here from somebody who bought something and they weren't a Sundowl order. So I should have two records. But if it was both the same email, it would only be one record. So this is just a good eyeball for me, because if this was $21 too, for example, and it's not listed like a Sundowl order, then I know there's something happened. Okay, so that is Zap number 1. It's not as fun as some of the other ones, but it's important because that helps you with those pain points. Okay, let's do a Dubsado one. That is cool. Okay, so Dubsado, once you set it up, you have the two triggers, which are new payment received and new lead. So I'm going to choose the new lead. And what I want to happen is I want to have anybody who fills out the lead capture and is not signing up for a webinar, they can go into my mailing list just to keep track of all the inquiries. So somebody who's not going for a freebie or for a webinar sign up, they would go into my general inquiries, which means that they were connecting with me because they wanted to know more about my services. So I have an email list of all the people that have contacted me over the last couple of years. Okay, and as you can see, you can have multiple email accounts, Dubsado accounts, sorry. And then I want to filter them. And this is the integrated Zapier filter, okay? I'm gonna hit continue. And then I'm going to look through different pieces of information that Dubsado sends that helps me filter through what the lead's actually doing. So I know that anybody who has the title of Zap Domination or Zap Webinar is somebody who signed up for a webinar. So the title is something that you set up in Dubsado. When you create that lead capture, you can either have the title just be like website lead, or it could be that's a special client name, webinar, client name, interested in service A, client name, interested in service B. So that's where a title would come in. It's how you set it up in Dubsado, and then you want to filter things that don't have that particular title, for example. So that's test 1, and you can add additional filters. So I also want to make sure that anybody with a title that doesn't have winning, which is another webinar I just did. And then I also have different leads that go into different mailing lists based on their interest level. So if they have an interest in your business ecosystem, they're not a general inquiry, they go into a different folder in MailChimp, okay? The other thing that you can do, if you look at this new lead piece right here, it won't let me scroll down anymore, is that you have not just their name, their email, the start date that automatically defaults, their phone number, their date. If you have workflows attached, either in the actual lead capture or in the workflow building block of Dubsado, you could say that this workflow is how you want to manage what the client gets. So for example, if you have a general inquiry lead capture and you want someone to say, hey, do you want to be on our mailing list? Instead of saying checkbox yes or no, you can actually use a workflow. Yes, I would love to be on your mailing list, or no, I would not like to be on your mailing list. So that building block would say, workflow A is yes. So if the workflow title is yes, mailing list, you could say workflow title contains yes. And you would create a workflow that sends probably the same exact email to both leads. It would just tell internally your systems in the back end that if the person chooses yes, while the workflow is technically still the same, it's called something different. So it sends a signal to MailChimp that they want to be on your mailing list. Do I have everybody on that one, on the workflows? So as you can see, all these different pieces are in here. I'm sure we'll nail it down a little bit more, but just understanding that there's all these different pieces of information that Dubsado sends over. So just because Dubsado only sends new lead and new payments, it also sends a wealth of information when they send the information through Zapier, if that makes sense. Okay. We are on track. Okay, so let me close out of this. I'm going to delete this. So again, if you mess up, you can just delete. And then you continue. And then this is where the magic happens. So I've done a ton of filters and saying, okay, so I gotta check the filter again. Okay, so basically I filtered and said if all of these things are not true, I want them to become a subscriber on my mailing list. Okay, so I set up my MailChimp because I love MailChimp. I'm going to add or update a subscriber. You can also find campaigns, you can find subscribers, but for the most part, I think you're updating leads into subscribers. Okay, so I connected my MailChimp account, and then I pick a list. And so here's all the lists that I have in MailChimp. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the information from the lead in Dubsado to contain all the information. So see, as you can see, it says 1 and 2. So here are the different steps. So sometimes it pulls up information, right? This is just a filter, so it can continue false or true. But here, the new lead will have all that information again. So I want to have the email that the lead put in when they fill in their lead capture. I don't need a double opt-in. I want to update existing, so if they already are in my mailing list, they will get updated. You can replace groups. Now, if you want the first name and last name to show up in this setup, you will have to go into MailChimp and set up your subscriber list to have first name, last name as required, or Zapier will not pull that information from MailChimp. I get that question a lot. I want to have their first name and last name because I always do like the, hey, F name, this is awesome. So make sure that you have your subscriber list set up in the way that you want the information to transfer from Dubsado into MailChimp. So if you have interest lists that they fill in, all of that information, you want to make sure that you're asking for it in MailChimp so that you can tell Dubsado to talk to MailChimp. Okay? And again, as you build all these apps, you can test each step, and then you can always add more steps. And this is where it starts to get into, picking which app you want to use and how you want it to work with everything and all that fun stuff, okay? So that was my Zap for getting people who fit certain criteria into a mailing list in MailChimp from Dubsado. Okay, let's go back. Let's talk about client onboarding. And we talked about how to get around the limitations in Dubsado, for example. So I use Zapier to look for certain emails in Gmail, because if I get a certain email, then I know that I have to start the onboarding process, right? So I do a new email matching search after I hooked up my Gmail. So you can see new labeled email. So if somebody puts in a certain label and you're a label person like myself who doesn't like any emails in my inbox, you can do new labeled email, new attachment, new start email, new thread, all kinds of fun stuff. And then you start using the search string. So I like to know when somebody signs a new contract, because that's the ping to push them into the onboarding process. There's a stuff that I do in Dubsado, but there's also stuff that I do personally in my project management to keep track of them and set up, folders and things like that. So I have a lot of back end that I have to do whenever somebody signs on for a new project. Okay. So I know that the email comes from noreply@dubsado.com and the subject is signed your contract. So see, you want to make sure that you use the words and you use dashes in between the words. That would be consistent for what you need to pull from Gmail to make other things happen based on that. So the emails that are signed your contract are from noreply@dubsado and signed your contract. Okay. Now, I use Asana to set up my project management. There are two things that you can do. This is stuff that you can, the first human step for my promo stuff. Yes, exactly. It's the first step that you actually have to touch something if you're doing it all right, correct? So the first thing that you can do is that you can actually create a new project in Asana. But I'm a little bit of an organizational freak, so I already have project templates set up in Asana. So I don't want Zapier to set up new projects. I want to set it up myself, but I want to be reminded to set up a new project because I will forget, because I'm a forgetter also. So this is why I have projects, templates that are already created in Asana. So what I do is I go in, I have an email reminder that comes into Asana as a task. I got the new contract email. It becomes a task in Asana. And then I can go in here and copy the project and name it client name, whatever it has. I can include all the assignees and all of that information, due dates, and I can start that from there. Cool thing is, I also have Zapier set up on a second step later on. So it's telling me to create a task in Asana once I get a new signed contract. Okay, so that's step one. Then, cool thing is that when I create a new project in Asana, Zapier knows, because that's a trigger for me. Okay, so Asana is going to create, when there's a new project, because you have new comment, new task in project, tag added to task, new projects. You can also have other ones, but these are the most common ones. When there's a new project in my Asana account, it creates, I use Toggle for my project manager to keep track of time. So it'll create a new project and for her to charge to in Toggle for me already. So it'll go into Toggle, it'll create a project. I connect that. And it'll create it in the workspace that I want. It'll create the name of the project, which is the name of the project in Asana. It's now the project in Toggle. So it's easy to keep track of. And it's usually just the client name. Project is in private because my team can get to it. And it's not billable because that's not how I track my time. And then I can create a folder from, it'll actually create a folder in Google Drive for me as well. So it'll say, okay, now I need a new folder in Google Drive, and it will label it with the project name in Asana, which is super cool. So I get a task whenever somebody signs a contract. I get a task in Asana. I follow that task, which is create a new project, and then I create a new project, and it does all the stuff for me, right? It does all the hard work for me. And then it'll create another task to keep me on track. And it's a workspace in Asana. And then it'll have the task name information. It could have notes if I need to have notes, consistent notes each time. I can have dates too. So usually it's the same day because I should do it right then, right? And then I could also say, make sure that I share the Google Drive that was just created with my project manager and the client. So it keeps me on track, keeps me focused, because there's stuff that happens in Dubsado, but there's also stuff on the back end. I need a project created because I already have a template of things that need to happen for specific projects. I need a new Google Drive set up. And then I also need to remember to share that Google Drive file with the client and my project manager. So, okay, so Alan says, I wonder if Todoist can do some of the same stuff with Dropbox, or might be switching from Todoist after. Okay, I have not worked a lot with Todoist. I can look at those steps to see. I'm sure there's something that you can do, Alan. So I will check on Todoist on that one. We can go at the very end. We can review it a little bit. And then Denise said, can you scroll to how to the flow again? You started with searching Gmail and then you went to what action filter. Okay, so I'm searching Gmail first. So let's go back. Alan, it takes about 15 minutes if you're searching Google Gmail, but everything else is pretty instantaneous. I think it's just constantly running. I think the higher paid plan you get in Zapier, the faster things happen too. But for the most part, I don't see a huge lag in terms of switching from having information flow. Even like people who are registering for a webinar, it's usually within a minute or so. So it's very quick. Okay, so Denise, what happened was I have emails coming through in Dubsado. So first thing I do is I search. I look for a new email matching search. So it'll check Gmail on a consistent basis and say, okay, I'm looking for the specific information. Okay. And then I set up Gmail account. You just connect an account and it'll take you through the whole process. It's super easy. I just don't want to waste the time going through all of that. And then I say, okay, so all of the reminder tasks from Dubsado. So if you have like a reminder that comes through, I would just push it to your project management program if you need to, like if you use Asana or something outside of Dubsado, you can definitely just have like Asana. You can email directly into Asana. Every time you get an email, you can filter your Gmail to just shove all of your emails into your task, which is what I do. Or you could say that if you have a reminder task coming through Dubsado, like if you have like to-dos and they get emailed to you, for example, if you know that, tell my assistant to order flowers for X wedding, just make sure that you use the subject line flower order, because that's the reminder from Dubsado, and then just use a no reply Dubsado, and then it can actually be filtered to your assistant, for example. So you're looking for that search string of no reply and subject, and then use the words, but use the dashes in between words. So signed your contract would be signed dash your contract. New lead would be new dash lead. Does that make sense, Denise, so far? Okay, so, and I test this over and over and over again until I get the right string too, just because even though you think you get it, it doesn't always make sense. So, and then you can always test them, right? And it'll show you what the email looks like, right? And then what will happen now is that in Asana, because Gmail found this email that matches that criteria, I'm now telling Asana to create a task. You can also just have it directly start a project, but because I have those projects already templated out, I want to create the project myself. So I create task. And you can also find projects. You can do a whole bunch of stuff, right? And the scroll bars are really small today. Okay. And then I pick out which organization. If I already have a project in mind, like if I have like projects in process right now, I would tag that project. So it'll have all that. And then you can, if you have different sections in the project, you can search in a section. And then if you don't, the name of this is create new project. So this is telling me that I want to create a new project. And I can actually pull information from Gmail, you know, just saying so-and-so signed contract or whatever. But because it's from Gmail and not MailChimp, not Dubsado, it's not going to pull like lead name and things like that. It's just pulling the subject into the email, the body of the email, and who it's from, the name, and things like that. So this is why having the fields doesn't always work when you're using Gmail, so it's not as prettily formatted, but it's still important that it pulls this information and says, okay, this thing happened, so now I need to do this. So I have create new project as a name, and then I have client signed contract, create project in Asana. So usually I know who's doing it. And then I can just go in and create a new project. I can create the due date, which is the date of the email. So this is where I pull the filters. And you can have the date here, right? So that's the due date. I can also have, you know, times and things like that. I assign it to myself because I need to have it, so it'll show up in my tasks. And then I also can have, you know, if I wanted to go to upcoming inbox later today, if you want to have those organization, like I need to do it today or I need to do it tomorrow or now it's my inbox, all of those different statuses. Okay, and then I also have, I have my project manager follow it just so that they know it's coming on board, okay? And you can add additional followers so you can have like your entire team be notified that a new project's on deck. And then I have different tags, so I can do tags like that. So all that's done, and then you could say, okay, create task. Then I'm gonna say, okay, the separate step is once I create that project, the next waterfall of workflow happens. I have a question. Rebecca says, mind is officially blown. I'm so excited. That's what I'm looking for. That's what I want. So as you can see, this is like a total rabbit hole, right? So yes, so that's how you kind of work through the process and you kind of follow the prompts and see what information can be pulled and what cannot be pulled. Yes, so you can go, so Todoist does have a lot and Dropbox is there. And so Alan says I could pull the email from someone completing a proposal with their options, trigger a new project in Todoist, and then when the project is Todoist is created, then creates Dropbox folder for client calls. Yes, exactly. So it's a whole, like, you can do a whole bunch of stuff and have like 5 million zaps and spend, you know, not have to do anything because it just does it all for you. So as you can see, there's a ton that you can do, and it's just a matter of going through all the programs. I don't know all 750 programs. I don't pretend to, but I love the challenge of trying new programs, let me tell you. Alan is not going to get any sleep tonight. So again, I have the money one. Denise, did I answer your question enough that you feel comfortable? And so, let's see. Okay, good. And I told you if you need to have more questions, go ahead and message me. So like, for example, this is a fun one that I did in the last class, and someone like the next day, it was the awesomest thing in the world because their phone was making noise and they didn't know why. So PayPal, when your PayPal comes in, Zapier has a send SMS tool, which is really cool because like if you started this like 5 years ago, it was so expensive to get text message, like text message marketing and all that text message in general was just so expensive. And the fact that Zapier does it for $20 for like the lowest price point is amazing. So basically, I know other programs, other CRM programs do text you if you have, I don't even know what programs do it anymore, but if you have a new sale, they will text you. So basically you can have the same thing happen. You get a new subscriber, you have a new MailChimp person, like whatever you need. If you get, there's certain things in QuickBooks that I like. So you have all of that information and you can get a text message with that information, right? So Zapier has an SMS, which is text message. You can pick a phone number. And every time I do this, it changes the phone number, which is really annoying. But you can say new payment from let's see. You can have the person's name, their email. You can have the total amount, payment date. You can have all that information in a text. Super awesome, right? Okay. Okay. So all that information can be in a text to you. And then if you have your phone set up with that contact with a fun ding, like mine's like, I don't even know what it's really called, like cha-ching, but I call it cha-ching. I know what it is. So when the cha-ching happens, when you have just a specific notification for that text coming through from that contact, it comes through and it's super cool. But see, you have the information from PayPal that you can pull in and you can create all these attacks with all that information. Or you can even do like something like, I know one person who actually sends them to her husband so he knows that she gets paid. So, you know, as a fun like little reminder that she's working too. So she totally loves having this type of message thing going on. And then again, you go through the process and you set up your phone number basically. And that's how you get your texts. Okay. Let's do a couple more. Another thing that I love about Calendly, I'll show you my last favorite piece, is that I like to have Zoom meetings with clients. I don't actually like do a lot of phone calls unless it's like in between or I know I'm not going to be at my desk. For the most part, I like to have Zoom calls. I also allow people to book time on my calendar. Either it's a 20-minute session just to get to know each other, an hour consultation, or even if they want to schedule their setup meetings or interim meetings, everyone can do that electronically on Calendly. So I don't have to sit there and say, okay, well I have these days open and I can meet with you on this time, maybe this time, and then send have that go back and forth. So I use Calendly to manage my calendar. So whenever somebody fills in Calendly, whenever they create an appointment in Calendly, I filter it to say as if they don't want a phone call. If they want a phone call, then I just manage the time with them. I don't have a Zoom call. But if they want a Zoom call, which is 95% of people I talk to want Zoom calls, I can tell Calendly to set up a Zoom meeting, which is awesome because instead of me having to go through my emails like once a day and send out my Zoom links to everybody, it's already doing it for me. So the minute they book on Calendly, they're going to get a link with the link to Zoom with their information. So basically it's 2 steps, right? You have to actually set up the meeting in Zoom, and Zoom is like Skype, but it's a little bit more consistent and doesn't have as much problems, I think, as Skype. So you can create meetings. So you create the meeting type. I have meetings or webinars. And then the topic is the event name and the person's name. So for example, the event type would be assessment call, and then the invitee name would be the person who scheduled a call. It'll set the time based on Calendly. Because someone set up a time. So that's it, event time pretty, and time zone, and then duration you can actually pull from Calendly too. So we'll set up a meeting with the person's name, the type, when it actually is supposed to happen, the time zone, and it will also pull in the amount of time that they're supposed to be in the meeting. Super cool, right? The best part is, not only will they create the meeting, they will send them an email and tell them the meeting link, which is super awesome, because now I don't have to go into Zoom and set up the meeting, and then I don't have to send the email either. It's just done, so I can just trust the system. I trust Calendly to book time that it's supposed to. I trust Calendly to tell Zoom to set up a meeting for that person at that specific time if they don't want a phone call, and then also send an email to them saying, hey, here's a link to your Zoom. If you have any questions, don't be afraid to ask. So you pick the 2, which is the invitee email right here, right? And then I want to copy this into myself, because then I label it. And then you have the from name. You can have reply to if you want to have a special email. The subject, I just put your Zoom meeting link. I can also say, first name, here's your meeting link, things like that. So your meeting link for Saturday, things like that. But you see, it pulls all the information from the filters in that come from Calendly. And then I have, just like you use canned emails in Dubsado, you have this kind of canned email that you create. Hi, first name. I'm looking forward to our call. Please see your Zoom link here. And I just pull that from step 2, or step 3, sorry, create meeting, and creates that join URL. If you've not used the program before, blah, 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 talk soon, my name. I also label it in my inbox, so it'll go into Calendly and it'll go out of my inbox. And I can attach things if you want information attached to the email, but it will send an email to the client. So the client gets the email from Calendly to set up their call, but they also get their Zoom meeting link at the same time, because I don't use the same link for everybody. I used to, and people would sometimes bleed into the next call. So it's much easier, and I don't really like waiting rooms, so I just have everybody have their own meeting link so that nobody bleeds into the wrong call. So yes, Alan is now nerding out on all the cool things that we can do. So I think that is some of the cool stuff. It's not everything that you can do with Zapier, but I think it helps you understand that the trigger, the search, and the action, and how it all works together. And then let's go back to does anybody have any questions? Either we're all asleep, or all our minds are completely blown and we're not even sure. Yes, I will take a look at Todoist. If nobody else has any questions, I want to make sure that we answer any questions, but if not, let's go ahead and take a look at Todoist. But first, I want to just go over the end piece, and then we can go back into that, okay? Oh, and then what is the field that maps the lead from Dubsado to the contact in Zapier? Okay, so what is the field? So if I go into when you pull in a new lead from Dubsado, then you can filter or do the information with a whole ton of different pieces, okay? So if I do this, if I look at this filter, basically tells me all the different ways that, all the different pieces of information. So you have the first name, last name, email, full name, title, which is the title of the lead as it comes through Dubsado, the start date, you have the start date mapped, you have work full title, you have descriptions, completion messages. You can sort by all those different things. So all these things are coming in and you can act upon that information. Does that make sense, Denise? Okay, cool. Oh, am I overwhelming you, Linda? um, do we want to take a step back and maybe go over a couple things, Linda? Okay. Keep losing my chat. Oh, I'm not even sharing my screen. Okay, so sorry, Denise. We were going over. Here's all the pieces that you can pull. So you can have schedule, payment schedules, all kinds of craziness, which is important as you start going into payments because a lot more of that, the scheduling and things like that will go into those pieces. Keep losing the chat. Okay, so lead title is in the capture. Okay. Awesome. Okay, so I think that's everything. And then we will come back to Todoist in a minute, Alan. And then, so just wrapping up, understanding how Zapier works, the limitations of apps and how they work together. Just understanding that just because you don't see the exact trigger that you want, remember you only have one trigger and you can have a bunch of searches and actions and you can have like 50 item zap. Make sure you think outside of the box and you're trying to work to make your business more efficient, work more efficiently, solve pain points like my annoyance with Sendowl, and then just test it and see what you get. And you can pull leads and pull information as you see. All this information that you're seeing when I filter things is coming from people that I've pulled through leads, or I usually use Testy McTesterson, so I know it's me. So if I'm trying to test something, I will test it on Testy McTesterson and use my email address. So if it does anything crazy, it's not going to hurt anybody. So always just make sure that you're just testing and trying things out and having fun with that. I think that's the biggest thing, is just have fun with all this stuff. It's a lot of work and a lot of energy to put into, but it's like super awesome. Okay, so last thing, little plug. I am putting together a subscription box for your inbox. I like to break down programs and systems and do them all day long, and I think it's the coolest thing ever. So as new things come through, I am trying to put together a subscription box so that if you have certain programs that you like to work with, or if you have questions and you want experts, because I'm not an expert in anything or everything, some things maybe, I will work together with experts to get answers for you. So like I have a person who is like a QuickBooks ninja. She like pounds away at QuickBooks all day long and trying to make it work with Dubsado, and she's just excited about all the apps and programs I am. So I have people like that that I work with that I would love to introduce you to, and just to meet other people who are super interested in making their businesses as efficient as possible. This is still in the infancy stages, but I'm super excited about it. So if you are interested in getting on the interest list, join. It's bit.ly YBE interest. And I will put that in the chat. But so you can see that. But yes, so that's what I'm working on. So let's go back. Where is my chat? Okay. Okay, so let's go back. Alan, you still had questions about Todoist. Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions? If not, you are more than welcome to stay on. I am still recording so you can see all working on Zaps in action. But again, I wanted to thank you so much for being here tonight. I think you guys had a lot of great questions, and I think that this was really fun tonight. But I'm also a complete nerd. So I just added in the chat the link to the subscription box interest list. So if you're interested in that, and then let's go ahead and go back to Alan's questions. I need a Zap for just organizing my screens. Let me see. Let me share. As you can see, I'm not afraid to press the wrong button. Okay. Let's see. So Alan wants to know, Todoist, using labels to tag something as context tags, Dropbox for all files, and then Dubsado. Evernote for new meeting notes and all calls for call notes with customers and stuff like that. So are you trying to relabel things in Todoist, or just moving stuff in Dropbox and things like that? Okay. So I think that having the new lead go into create a project and Todoist, or tasks and Todoist would probably be the first thing that you would look at. Let's see. Now my computer is running really, really slow. Okay. So I'm scrolling down to Todoist. So basically, if you have a new lead, you can create a project or you can create a task. So if you have somebody that you want to make sure that you follow up with, so instead of necessarily having an email from Dubsado to remind you, you would just say that Todoist is going to get a notification that you have a new lead, and that task is to follow up with them 2 days after that happens. And then you can also search to find tasks or projects, find users. So a lot of it, I think, is going to be task management, similar to Asana, just with the project, creating projects, creating tasks, things like that. Same thing with Evernote. I think that it's the same principle in Dropbox and Google Drive, really for the most part, are the same program to some extent. Google Drive just more has the word processing and the Google Sheets and some of the, I don't need a computer anymore, an actual laptop, because I don't need, Microsoft Word and things like that. So that's where Google Drive shines versus Dropbox, is that you can manage all of your actual paperwork in Google Drive as well. Yes, so we can definitely talk about that. And then let me see, Evernote. So Evernote, I believe, is pretty robust as well. So you have the 3 triggers, which are new note, new reminder, new notebook. And the actions are create notes. So maybe if you have a new lead, you can create a note to take notes. Will be a way to keep track of that. Or if it's, but I don't know if you do a whole ton with leads necessarily in Google, in Dubsado. So maybe it would go back to those Gmail notifications. I got this new email from Dubsado saying I have a new contract. So now it's time to create that notebook for that client or create, a new note for somebody. So I think those are the big things that you can work on, and we can definitely dig into it more as we work together. But yeah, I think that there's a lot that you can do. As you can see, like I said, 750 apps. Kind of crazy. So again, I think everybody, unless anybody else has any questions, I think we will go ahead and wrap it up. We are actually over time. I am so surprised. So thank you so much, all of you, for joining me today, this evening. This was really awesome. I love to see how other people view what we're working on, and we'll see where they get stuck so that I can better answer questions. And I always like to see new apps and see new programs that I should be looking at. So thank you, Alan. So again, thank you all this evening for coming. And I will have the replay so you can kind of see what we worked on again and take notes at a slower pace. And that's it. Have a great evening, everyone, okay? Bye now.